Ladies and gentlemen, there will come a time in your life when you will face battles no one else can fight for you. You'll find yourself in the quiet of midnight, wrestling with fears, doubts, and questions that no one can answer but you. And in those moments, you will feel utterly alone. But understand this, being alone in your most difficult seasons is not a punishment. It is a test of your strength and your spirit. Solitude is where your true self is revealed. When no one shows up to encourage you, to call you, or to stand by you, that is when you discover just how strong you really are. Not everyone is assigned to your storm. Some people are only meant to walk with you in sunshine, and when the thunder comes, they scatter. It's not betrayal, it's just a revelation. And instead of being bitter, be thankful. Because life has a way of clearing the room when it's time for you to hear your own voice, and more importantly, the voice of God. Pain isolates you, but it also refines you. It doesn't come to break you, it comes to shape you. Because the fire you go through alone will prepare you for the mountain you'll stand on later. Support is beautiful, but it is not guaranteed. Stop expecting people to understand what you were only meant to experience. Stop seeking applause during your process. The most powerful transformation happens when no one is clapping, because in the silence, purpose begins to speak. You start to gain clarity, to realign your values, and to see who truly matters and who never did. The absence of others is often the presence of divine strategy. God sometimes removes distractions in the form of people, not to hurt you, but to help you focus. The valley teaches more than the mountaintop ever could. It humbles you, strengthens you, and teaches you how to pray with tears in your eyes and faith in your heart. In loneliness, you discover endurance. In isolation, you learn discipline. And in heartbreak, you learn to love yourself without conditions. Your greatest strength will come from moments when you had every reason to give up, but you chose to keep going. So when you find yourself alone in the most difficult season of your life, don't see it as a curse, see it as preparation. The struggle is not the end, it's the beginning of a new chapter. And even when no one else is around, know this: God is closest when the world feels furthest. His presence doesn't need an audience. His plan for you was never dependent on people staying. You're not abandoned, you're being trained. And when you rise again, and you will, you'll look back and realize that what tried to break you was actually building you for something greater. There will come a time in your life when everything feels heavy. The world may be moving on, but you feel stuck in a moment where nothing makes sense. You wake up in the morning and feel the weight of the silence. The phone doesn't ring. The messages don't come. The people who once said, "I'm always here for you," suddenly vanish. And in that stillness, you begin to understand something profound. The most difficult moments of your life will often be the loneliest. Not because you chose to be alone, but because some journeys are not meant to be shared. There are battles that no one else can fight for you, no matter how much they love you. There are storms that you must walk through on your own, not because you're being punished, but because that storm holds the lesson your soul needs to grow. When you're in pain, it's natural to look around for comfort, for support, for someone to lean on. But what do you do when no one shows up? What do you do when those you expected to be there simply aren't? It's in that moment, that very raw, exposed, heartbreaking moment, that your strength begins to awaken. You may not feel strong. In fact, you may feel like you're falling apart. But the truth is, being able to carry your own heart when it's breaking is one of the highest forms of courage. It's the ability to walk through the fire even when no one is clapping, No one is watching and no one is waiting at the other end to congratulate you. That is where real strength is built, in solitude. Not everyone is meant to walk through your valley with you. Some people are blessings for a season, not for a lifetime. And as painful as it is to realize that, it is necessary. Life has a way of removing the unnecessary so you can focus on the essential. And sometimes the essential is you, your voice, your heart, your purpose, your relationship with God. It's easy to lose yourself in a world that's constantly noisy, constantly demanding, constantly pulling you in 1,000 directions. But when the noise dies down, when the crowd leaves, when you're left standing with nothing but your thoughts, that's when the work begins. That's when transformation starts. Being alone in hard times teaches you how to talk to yourself differently. It forces you to confront your fears, your insecurities, your weaknesses. It makes you face the question, who am I when no one else is around? And once you answer that, you become unshakable, because people can leave, money can fade, circumstances can change, but what remains is who you've become in the process. The valley might be dark, but it is fertile. That's where roots grow deep. That's where real, lasting character is built. So when you're in that lonely season, don't curse it. Don't rush through it. Embrace it. Learn from it. Grow through it. Cry if you need to, but don't stop. Rest if you must, but don't quit. Because even though it feels like you're alone, you're not. God is watching. He is near. He is allowing the silence so you can finally hear Him clearly. And one day, you will look back on this season not with bitterness, but with gratitude, because you'll realize that in your hardest moments, you became your strongest self. When life gets hard, really hard, something strange begins to happen. The phone calls slow down, the texts stop, the people who once surrounded you seem to fade away. And while at first you might tell yourself they're just busy or distracted, the truth slowly sets in. You're in this part of the journey on your own. And it's not because you're unworthy of love or friendship. It's because this particular chapter was never meant to be shared. There are lessons in life that only come through solitude. There are breakthroughs that require silence. And there are versions of you that can only be born in isolation. While the world often paints being alone as something to fear, in reality, it is in those moments of deep solitude that the most powerful transformation takes place. You see, when you're surrounded by people, it's easy to rely on their energy, their encouragement, and their strength. But when all of that is stripped away, when no one is available to hold your hand, you're forced to find something deeper inside yourself. You learn how to comfort your own soul, how to speak life into your own heart, and how to stand tall with trembling legs. These are the moments that develop spiritual muscle. These are the hours when your mind and soul are refined like gold in fire. You start to understand that solitude is not a sign of failure. It is the space where divine preparation takes place. People often romanticize support and companionship, but support is not something guaranteed. Not everyone can handle the weight of your burden, and not everyone is called to walk your path. That's not rejection, it's reality. And sometimes it's a form of protection, because if someone walks with you when they're not equipped to understand your journey, they may try to pull you in the wrong direction. God often removes certain people from your life in difficult seasons, not to hurt you, but to help you hear His voice without interference. It's in these silent hours where your faith is tested, but also where your faith is deepened. When you're walking through a dark valley, there are things you begin to learn that you never noticed before. You become more aware of your thoughts. You become more sensitive to your inner world. You start to evaluate what truly matters. The noise of the world is replaced by the whisper of truth. The distractions are gone, and what remains is a raw, honest version of yourself. This is where you confront your pain, your fears, and your future. And though it hurts, this confrontation is necessary, because until you've faced yourself in silence, you don't truly know your capacity to endure, to rebuild, and to rise. Don't fear the season where it feels like no one is coming to save you, because in that very season you are being trained to save yourself, and more importantly, to trust the one who has been with you the entire time, God. His presence doesn't always shout, but it never leaves. While others may forget, overlook, or abandon you, He remains steady. The silence you're experiencing isn't empty. It's full of meaning. It's full of preparation. It's full of purpose. One day the light will shine again, and you'll look back on this season with a quiet kind of pride. Not because it was easy, but because you didn't give up. You made it through. And in doing so, you found something priceless. Your inner strength, your true identity, and a deeper connection with God than you've ever known before. There is a certain kind of strength that can only be developed in solitude. When the world around you is quiet, when the usual voices of comfort and companionship have gone silent, you begin to face life without a buffer. This isn't an easy place to be. In fact, it can be deeply painful. But it is also where you come face to face with the reality that not everyone is equipped to walk with you through your most difficult moments. Some people are only present for the good times, for the laughter, for the moments when everything is going well. But when the storms roll in, when the pressure builds, and when life starts demanding more than just casual presence, they step back, and sometimes they disappear altogether. It hurts, yes, but in that hurt, a lesson is planted. A lesson that will teach you how to stand even when the ground beneath you is shaking. Many people expect that when they go through hard times, others will show up and be there without being asked. But life teaches you that expectation is a heavy burden to place on others. The truth is, no one can fully understand what you're going through but you. Your struggle is uniquely yours. And even those who love you deeply may not have the capacity to handle the weight of your suffering. That doesn't make them bad. It makes them human. This is where emotional maturity begins to grow. You stop blaming people for not being there and start understanding that this part of the journey was never meant for crowds. It was meant for you and for the quiet voice inside that is calling you to grow, to rise, and to become something stronger. The silence is not your enemy. It's a mirror. It reflects what needs healing, what needs strengthening, and what needs to be let go. It also reveals who you are beneath all the labels and expectations. When you're alone in your pain, you begin to see yourself in a more honest light. You begin to notice how strong you've actually become, how much you've endured, and how capable you are of moving forward even without applause or recognition. This is the transformation that only solitude can bring. It's in this space where you shift from needing others to validate your worth to knowing that your worth was never dependent on them in the first place. People may walk away, but God never does. His presence doesn't always come with noise or grand gestures. Sometimes it's a quiet assurance in your heart. Sometimes it's the peace that comes when everything else feels like chaos. And sometimes it's simply the strength to take one more step when you feel like giving up. God doesn't remove everyone from your life to leave you empty. He does it to fill you with something deeper, something eternal, something unshakable. The loneliness you feel may just be the sacred space where His voice becomes louder than all others. Eventually, you'll look back at this time and realize it was necessary. Necessary for your growth, for your healing, for your becoming. You'll understand that the pain had a purpose, that the silence held wisdom, and that the loneliness shaped a version of you that nothing else could have produced. And when you emerge from that dark place, when you finally step into your light again, you won't need validation to know your worth. You'll carry it with you, quietly, powerfully, permanently, because you learned in the most difficult times of your life how to stand alone, and in doing so, how to stand strong. When you find yourself in the darkest seasons of life, one of the first things you notice is how quiet it becomes. The noise fades, the crowd thins, and the people you thought would be there through it all slowly vanish. It's in these moments that reality introduces itself in the most humbling way. Life has a way of revealing the truth through difficulty, and one truth that hits the hardest is this: the most challenging times of your life will often be the loneliest. It's not that people don't care, but rather that they are limited. Limited in understanding, limited in patience, limited in emotional capacity. And so, without warning, you find yourself alone, not because you pushed anyone away, but because your journey required isolation. It is in that isolation that something sacred begins. At first, you resist it. You want to pick up the phone, reach out, cry for help. But sometimes there is no answer. Not because people are cruel, but because they're not assigned to this level of your growth. There are some breakthroughs that only happen when no one else is around. The silence is uncomfortable, but it is purposeful. It strips away all distractions and forces you to confront the parts of yourself that are often buried under noise and company. It teaches you to find your own voice when no other voice is speaking into your life. This is where maturity takes root. Not in the applause, but in the silence. Not in the presence of support, but in its absence. You begin to develop a new kind of strength, the kind that isn't loud or boastful, but steady and unshakable. You learn how to motivate yourself, how to encourage yourself, and how to keep going when no one is watching. These lessons are never taught in comfort. They are only learned when life demands more of you than you ever thought you had to give. And the only way to discover that you have more inside you is to be placed in a position where you have no choice but to find it. There will be nights when you cry alone, mornings when you wake up and feel the weight of emptiness. But those are not signs of weakness. They are part of the process. You're being stretched, shaped, and redefined. Every tear, every silent prayer, every moment you choose not to quit is a step forward. And even if the world doesn't see it, even if no one acknowledges it, heaven does. You're not walking alone. God is with you in every step, even when His presence doesn't feel obvious. Sometimes His silence is not absence. It's the sound of trust. He knows what He placed inside you. He knows what you're capable of, and He allows these seasons not to break you. You will outgrow people, you will outgrow environments, and you will outgrow certain versions of yourself. That's what pain does. It forces change. It strips away the superficial and demands authenticity. And while it may seem unfair, it's always for your good. Because on the other side of this loneliness is wisdom, strength, and a renewed sense of purpose. You won't need to explain yourself. You won't need to justify your silence. Your growth will speak for itself. And when the next season comes, one of clarity, one of opportunity, one of peace, You will carry the calm confidence of someone who survived, someone who learned to walk alone and discovered they were never truly alone at all. There comes a stage in life where the only voice you'll hear is your own echo bouncing off the walls of solitude. It's not because the world has turned against you, but because you've stepped into a space where others cannot follow. This space is not crowded, not cheerful, not easy. It's the place where transformation begins. And transformation rarely comes with comfort. In the hardest moments of your life, when everything seems to be falling apart, your dreams, your relationships, your self-worth, there's a silence that enters. It's unsettling at first. You look around and realize that the people you used to lean on are nowhere in sight, not out of malice, but out of limitation. And while you could blame them, the truth is, some battles are designed for you alone. When life strips away the noise, you start to realize how much of your identity was tied to people, places, and things. You begin to notice how many of your decisions were influenced by others' opinions, how many of your dreams were shaped by expectations. But in solitude, those voices fade. What's left is the real you, the unfiltered, unguarded, unmasked version. And facing that version of yourself is not easy. It requires courage to confront your insecurities, patience to sit with your pain, and strength to carry your story without needing to explain it to anyone. In this lonely space, you don't just survive, you evolve. You begin to understand that growth often requires separation. Separation from the familiar, the comfortable, and sometimes even from the people you love, because not everyone is meant to grow with you. Some are there for a chapter, not the whole book. Their exit doesn't mean your story ends. It means your story is shifting into a new dimension. And sometimes that shift demands isolation. It's in the quiet that you learn to hear your own soul again. You remember your values, your vision, your voice. And suddenly, what felt like abandonment becomes alignment. As difficult as it is, this season teaches you something irreplaceable: how to be there for yourself. When no one else claps for you, you learn to celebrate your smallest victories. When no one else encourages you, you become your own source of motivation. You stop looking for rescue and start becoming the person who can withstand the storm. That's when true power is born, not from external validation, but from internal resilience. And the strength that emerges from that kind of struggle can never be taken away. It's earned, it's sacred. Even in your most isolated moments, know that you are not truly alone. God doesn't abandon you when others do. In fact, He often waits until the room is empty to reveal His deepest truths. When the world's distractions are silenced, His voice becomes clearer. He begins to remind you of who you are, why you were created, and what lies ahead. You may not see the full picture yet, but that doesn't mean it's not being painted. You're in the middle of a process that's preparing you for something greater, something that couldn't be built in the crowd. So don't resent the loneliness, embrace it as part of your becoming. Because when you emerge from this season, you will not be the same. You'll be wiser, stronger, more grounded. You'll know who truly belongs in your life and who was only there for convenience. And most importantly, you'll know yourself on a level that only solitude could reveal. This is not the end. It's the beginning of the most authentic chapter you'll ever live. One written not with noise, but with truth. The truth is, nobody talks enough about how lonely growth can be. They talk about success, about rising above challenges, about becoming the best version of yourself, but rarely do they mention the silence that comes with it. When you're evolving, when you're healing, when you're shifting into the person you're meant to be, something quietly starts to happen. People pull away. Not because they necessarily wish you harm, but because they don't recognize the new space you're stepping into. Growth makes people uncomfortable, especially those who have gotten used to your older version. And so, unintentionally or not, they distance themselves. You feel it in the unanswered texts, in the lack of check-ins, in the way the energy begins to fade. And before long, you realize you're walking through this part of life alone. This is one of the hardest realizations to accept. That in your deepest pain, you may not have the comfort of others. That when you're dealing with fear, uncertainty, or heartbreak, you might not have someone to lean on. And it hurts because we're human. We want connection. We crave understanding. But sometimes God will remove all the familiar voices, not to punish you, but to get your attention. He wants to teach you how to stand without needing to be held, how to keep going without needing to be praised, and how to rely not on people, but on purpose. Because when your life is anchored in purpose, you can withstand the silence, the separation, and even the suffering. Being alone in hard times forces you to confront your reality without filters. You begin to notice your thought patterns, your emotional reactions, your deepest fears. And while it's uncomfortable, it's also freeing. You no longer have to perform or pretend. There's no one to impress, no one to validate your struggle. It's just you, and that's where healing begins. You stop asking, why isn't anyone here for me? And start asking, what is this moment trying to teach me? That shift in perspective is powerful. It takes you from victim to student. And once you become a student of your pain, everything changes. Pain no longer controls you. It educates you. Some days will feel heavier than others. Some nights will be filled with tears that no one sees, but those are not wasted moments. They are sacred ones. Because it's in those private, painful experiences that your true foundation is laid. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Life is shaping you for something greater, and that kind of preparation cannot happen in the comfort of company. It happens in the trenches of isolation where character is built, faith is tested, and inner strength is formed. Eventually, the season will pass. You won't feel as alone as you do now. The weight will lift. The right people, those aligned with your growth, your values, your purpose, will begin to enter your life. But you'll be different. You won't need them to complete you. You won't rely on them to fill your emotional gaps, because you'll have already done the work. You'll have already faced yourself, healed your wounds, and stood on your own. And that right there is the gift of this lonely season. So if you're in a place right now where it feels like no one understands, like no one sees your pain, keep going. Don't let the silence convince you that you're on the wrong path. Sometimes silence is confirmation. It means you've stepped out of the crowd and into your calling. Trust that the isolation is doing more for you than any crowd ever could. You are not forgotten. You are being refined. There's a moment in every person's journey where life seems to slow down, not because things are getting easier, but because the noise starts to fade. The distractions go silent. The people who used to be around so often are suddenly distant. The texts that once filled your phone now remain unread. It's in these quiet, sobering moments that the truth settles in. You are walking through one of the most difficult seasons of your life, and you are doing it alone. Not because you chose to isolate yourself, but because this level of growth, this kind of transformation, is something no one else can do for you. It's not that others don't care. It's that this season wasn't meant for spectators. This is a divine appointment between you and your own soul. Being alone during struggle is one of the most challenging yet most necessary experiences you will ever face, because it's in these moments when you stop relying on external support and start tapping into a deeper strength you didn't know you had. The kind of strength that doesn't ask for attention or validation. The kind that shows up quietly like a flame in the dark, persistent and steady. When you're alone, you learn to sit with your pain instead of distracting yourself from it. You learn to understand your emotions instead of suppressing them. You develop emotional resilience, not because you wanted to, but because you had no other choice. In this season, people may misread your silence. They may assume you're distant, cold, or detached, but what they don't realize is that you're not avoiding them. You're just finally facing yourself. The real you, the one behind the social mask, the one who carries the weight of past traumas, disappointments, and dreams that never came to pass. And facing that person takes courage. It takes honesty. It takes a level of humility that only solitude can produce. While the world teaches you to keep busy, to move on quickly, to stay connected, real healing teaches you to pause, to sit, and to process. The loneliness you're feeling is not a curse, it's a classroom. One where you're being taught how to love yourself without conditions, how to encourage yourself when no one else is cheering, how to rebuild your faith when everything familiar has been stripped away. This is not punishment, it's preparation. You're not being broken down, you're being restructured. Every quiet night, every tear-filled morning, every unanswered prayer is shaping something in you that will serve you for a lifetime. A stronger foundation, a deeper wisdom, a clearer sense of purpose. Eventually the loneliness won't feel so heavy. Eventually the silence won't feel so suffocating, because you'll start to notice something powerful taking place within you. Your thoughts will become clearer. Your decisions will carry more conviction. Your peace will no longer depend on people staying or leaving. You will have learned to walk with yourself, to trust yourself, and most importantly, to walk with God, not just in theory, but in reality. Not because someone told you to, but because you found Him in the silence. You found Him when there was no one else to turn to. So, if you're walking through one of those seasons right now where you feel forgotten, overlooked, or misunderstood, don't lose heart. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are being built in the dark for something far greater than you can see right now. And one day when the light returns, you won't just be grateful for the breakthrough. You'll be grateful for the solitude that made it possible. You'll realize that the loneliness didn't weaken you, it refined you. And it introduced you to the most resilient version of yourself. There are seasons in life when silence becomes your closest companion. These are the times when the people you thought would be by your side disappear into the background. When the comforting voices go quiet and you're left to wrestle with your emotions in solitude. At first, it feels like abandonment. You question everything, your relationships, your worth, your strength. You wonder why the very people you supported when they needed help aren't around now that you're hurting. But then, somewhere in the stillness, a different realization begins to rise. You understand that this part of the journey was never meant to be shared. This is your personal valley, a place where growth happens quietly, without witnesses, without applause, and without company. The most difficult times of your life will often strip away what's unnecessary. They will reveal who's really there for you, and sometimes that list gets painfully short. It hurts to see familiar faces fade away when you need them the most. But in that process of loss and loneliness, clarity is born. You begin to see who you are beneath all the expectations and social roles. You meet a version of yourself that has been waiting to emerge. Not dependent, not easily broken, but resilient, reflective, and real. It's in this solitude that your inner voice gets louder. You begin to trust it, to follow it, and to honor it. Being alone in your struggles teaches you things no classroom or mentor ever could. It teaches you how to pick yourself up when there's no one around to cheer you on. It teaches you how to pray, not out of habit, but out of desperation and surrender. It teaches you how to hold your ground when life pulls everything else away. And maybe that's the reason for this season. Not to harm you, but to shape you. To strip away the noise so you can hear what truly matters. To remove the shallow connections so you can find deeper meaning. To take away the temporary comfort so you can build permanent strength. In our culture, loneliness is often seen as something to avoid. But when it arrives, uninvited and uncomfortable, it can actually become your greatest teacher. Solitude gives you a chance to detox your soul from the opinions of others. It invites you to question what you really want out of life, not what others want for you, but what you desire deep within. You start to notice patterns in your behavior, wounds you've ignored, dreams you've delayed, and with that awareness comes the power to change. No one ever tells you that the process of becoming will cost you comfort. It will cost you relationships that no longer serve your growth. It will cost you the security of being understood, but it will give you something far more valuable: authenticity. You'll no longer have to wear a mask. You'll stop seeking validation from the outside. You'll learn to validate yourself from the inside out. And when the time comes for new connections to form, they'll be different. They'll be based on who you are now, not who you were. You'll attract people who respect your journey, who don't run when things get hard, and who see strength in your silence. But most importantly, you'll know that even if they leave, you won't fall apart, because you've already been to the bottom. You've already walked through the fire. You've already survived the season where you had no one but yourself, and you made it. So don't resent this lonely season. Let it do what it came to do. Let it build you, heal you, purify you, because one day when you step into the next chapter of your life, you'll carry a strength that no one gave you. You found it in the silence, and it will never leave you. There are certain moments in life when everything feels like it's falling apart. Your relationships become distant, your ambitions feel out of reach, and even the person in the mirror looks unfamiliar. In these moments, you come face to face with a truth that few ever prepare you for. You'll walk through some of the hardest seasons of your life completely alone. Not because you're not loved, not because you're not worthy of support, but because the depth of your transformation requires isolation. Growth at its core is personal. And no matter how many people surround you during good times, adversity has a way of removing the crowd and leaving only the core. It can be a deeply painful experience, feeling as if no one understands what you're going through. You might reach out, hoping someone will truly listen, but their responses feel surface level, detached. You might try to explain what you're feeling, but words fall short. Eventually, you realize that not everyone is capable of holding space for the kind of weight you're carrying. And instead of trying to be understood, you retreat. Not out of bitterness, but because solitude becomes safer than misunderstood companionship. What feels like loneliness at first slowly becomes the space where you meet yourself more honestly than ever before. This solitude is not without purpose. It strips away illusions. It removes the noise of the world. It forces you to listen, not to others, but to the voice inside you that's been drowned out for far too long. That inner voice, once weak and fragile, begins to gain strength. You start to realize that everything you were looking for outside, validation, peace, direction, has always been waiting within. It just needed the quiet to be heard. And in that quiet, you begin the work that truly matters. You begin the process of becoming. In times of deep difficulty, when you're left alone with your pain, your doubts, and your unanswered prayers, you learn resilience. Not the kind that looks good on the outside, but the kind that sustains you when no one is watching. You learn how to cry without breaking. You learn how to fall and rise again and again without applause. You learn how to sit in your suffering without rushing to escape it. And slowly, something begins to shift. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you begin asking, what is this trying to teach me? The lessons that come from pain are never easy, but they're always necessary. You learn that not everyone who starts with you is meant to finish with you. You learn that people have limits, and you can't depend on others to fill the voids that only purpose and faith can satisfy. And most importantly, you learn that you are enough. Not because someone else says so, but because you've proven it to yourself in silence. In those lonely seasons, you become your own friend, your own encourager, your own guide. And that self-reliance becomes a powerful tool for everything that follows. Eventually, the season of isolation will pass. The heaviness will lift. New doors will open. But when that happens, you'll return to the world changed. You won't depend on others to complete you because you've already met yourself in the deepest valley. And that meeting changed you. You'll walk differently, speak differently, think differently. Because once you've gone through the fire of being alone in your hardest times and survived, you come out forged in a strength that nothing and no one can ever take away. That is the gift of solitude in suffering. It doesn't just break you, it builds the unshakable version of you. There's a sacred kind of silence that visits you during the hardest moments of your life. A silence that no amount of company can break. A silence that speaks volumes when words fail. In those moments, you realize something no one teaches you growing up. You'll face the darkest nights alone. When life knocks you down so hard that you can't even breathe. When your plans fall apart. When betrayal stings deeper than words. When fear becomes your daily companion. The room often empties. The same voices that once celebrated you may suddenly disappear. The hands that once held you might be nowhere to be found. And in that moment, you're left with just one person, yourself. At first, it feels unbearable. The silence is loud. The pain is raw. You may lie awake at night wondering why those closest to you don't understand the depths of your struggle. You might ask why they don't call, why they don't ask how you're doing, why they seem to carry on while you're barely surviving. But over time, you start to realize that people can only meet you at the level of their own awareness, their own strength. Not everyone is equipped to walk through the valley with you. Some people are only meant to stand with you on the mountain. That realization is painful, but it's also freeing because it forces you to stop expecting others to save you. Being alone in your struggle forces you to face your own reflection without distraction. You begin to see what you've been avoiding. You begin to notice your own patterns, your unresolved wounds, your hidden strength. And while the world encourages constant distraction through entertainment, through socializing, through anything that numbs you, this season invites you to do the opposite. It invites you to sit with your emotions, to stop running, to allow the discomfort to reveal its message. And in doing so, something transformative begins to happen. You stop blaming the world. You stop resenting the silence. And you start owning your healing. This kind of solitude is not a punishment. It's a preparation. Life is refining you, stripping away the layers that no longer serve you, removing the people who can't go where you're going. It's pruning your life so that when you bloom again, your roots will be stronger, your focus sharper, and your identity clearer. You are being shaped for a higher calling, and that shaping often happens in obscurity. You won't get applause for it. You won't be praised for surviving it. But when you come through it, you'll carry a presence, a power, and a peace that only those who've walked through fire understand. This season will teach you how to show up for yourself. When there's no one to encourage you, you'll learn to speak life over your own situation. When there's no one to lift you up, you'll learn how to rise anyway. When there's no one to understand you, you'll learn how to accept yourself without needing outside approval. And perhaps most importantly, when you feel like no one sees your pain, you'll come to know that God does. That even in the deepest isolation, you're never truly alone. He walks with you in the silence. He holds you in the heartbreak. He strengthens you when you have nothing left to give. So if you're in a place right now where you feel forgotten, abandoned, or invisible, know that this season is not the end of your story. It's the part where your character is being formed, where your inner foundation is being rebuilt, where your next chapter is quietly being prepared. The loneliness won't last forever, but the strength it builds in you will. One day you'll look back and thank the silence, the pain, the solitude, because they introduced you to the most powerful, authentic version of yourself. There are chapters in life that are meant to be walked alone, not because you're unworthy of support, but because the depth of transformation you're undergoing cannot be shared. These are the seasons that shape your identity, redefine your values, and sharpen your vision. They don't come with comfort or companionship. They arrive with challenges, silence, and an overwhelming sense of isolation. But it is in these very moments when you feel unseen, unheard, and unsupported that the most important work begins. You're being called inward, not to retreat in weakness, but to return to yourself in strength, to rediscover the voice inside you that has been buried under years of distractions, expectations, and noise. Being alone in the most difficult times of your life can feel like betrayal. You wonder where the people went who once promised to stand by you. You question why those you helped in their darkest hours are now silent in yours. But as you move through the grief of those unanswered questions, something else starts to emerge, a strange sense of clarity. You begin to realize that not everyone is capable of walking through your storm. Some people were only equipped to enjoy your sunshine. And that is not a reflection of your worth. It's simply the truth of human nature. Some lessons must be learned alone. Solitude in suffering has a way of purifying your perspective. The things you once obsessed over suddenly don't matter anymore. The opinions of others lose their grip on your decisions. You stop chasing validation because the silence teaches you that the only validation that truly sustains is the one that comes from within. It's in these moments when your back is against the wall that your inner voice starts to guide you more clearly. You realize you can trust yourself, your instincts, your wisdom, your resilience. And that realization becomes a quiet revolution within you. You start to show up for yourself in ways you never had before. You learn to encourage yourself when no one is cheering. You learn to wipe your own tears, not because you're emotionless, but because you become emotionally disciplined. You learn to rely on faith, not because it's easy, but because it's the only thing holding you together when everything else falls apart. And through that process, your character deepens. You become more grounded, more intentional, more aligned with who you were always meant to be. What makes these seasons so powerful is not just what they strip away, it's what they reveal. They uncover the parts of you that are unbreakable. They expose the lies you've believed about yourself. They dismantle the illusions that success is loud and public, when in reality, the most meaningful breakthroughs happen in silence. In a world that constantly encourages connection, it's easy to forget that solitude is also sacred. It doesn't mean you're lost, it means you're being refined like gold in the fire. And though the process is painful, the outcome is priceless. Eventually, this chapter will close. The darkness will lift. New people will come into your life. People who resonate with who you are now, not who you used to be. But by then, you won't be depending on them to complete you, because you've already learned how to be whole on your own. You've already faced your fears, felt your pain, and stood tall through the silence. And that kind of strength can never be taken from you. It was earned, alone, and it will carry you for the rest of your life. Some of the most profound breakthroughs in life come not through celebration or applause, but through quiet endurance in seasons of solitude. There will be moments when life becomes so overwhelming, so brutally honest, that you'll find yourself standing alone in the midst of your greatest battles, not because you pushed people away, but because these battles are too personal, too defining to be shared. The truth is, in the most difficult times of your life, you will often be left alone. And as harsh as that sounds, it is not a tragedy. It is a turning point. It is the place where the surface falls away and only what is real remains. It is where you discover who you are when no one is watching, no one is clapping, and no one is calling. It's in these silent seasons that life begins to reshape you. Everything unnecessary begins to fall off. Old identities, false friendships, superficial routines. You begin to see clearly what truly matters and who truly matters. You realize that many of the relationships you thought were solid were actually built on convenience or mutual need, not depth or commitment. And though that revelation stings, it frees you, because the weight of expectation starts to lift. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself, to be understood, or to hold together the pieces of relationships that were never meant to last. The silence teaches you things that noise never could. It teaches you how to be fully present with your own thoughts without needing to run from them. It teaches you how to befriend solitude without confusing it for loneliness. You learn that your value isn't based on how many people surround you, but on how deeply you understand and respect yourself. These are lessons that don't come easily. They are learned through tears, long nights, and internal battles that feel invisible to the world. But these lessons are what create an inner foundation so strong, no storm can shake it. You start to develop an intimacy with your soul. You learn how to listen to your pain instead of avoiding it. You learn how to sit in discomfort without panicking. And most importantly, you begin to understand that your worth was never meant to be measured by others' presence or absence. You realize that you were never truly alone because God was with you the entire time, whispering wisdom through the silence, strengthening you through the stillness, and preparing you for something greater than you could imagine. This period of isolation isn't about punishment, it's about preparation. You're being equipped for a future that demands clarity, strength, and authenticity. And none of those qualities are developed in comfort. They are forged in fire. The days you spend wrestling with doubt, fear, and heartbreak are the days you're being refined. And as difficult as it is to walk through them without support, you'll one day look back and realize those were the days that built the foundation of your greatness. When you come out on the other side, and you will walk differently. You will speak with more conviction. You will carry yourself with quiet confidence because the battles you fought in secret gave you a strength that doesn't shout, it just stands. Steady, unshaken, and unbothered by what once broke you. That is the power of being alone in the most difficult times. It reveals the warrior within, the version of you that needed to be awakened, not rescued. And from that moment on, you'll never see solitude the same way again, because it was there in the silence that you became everything you were created to be.